So we're fresh off of Color of the Year season, and that's why we're going to talk about one of the Benjamin Moore Colored Trends colors moving into next year, and it's called Antique Pewter. I'm James, the color guy. Check out the color wheel. And today we're going to focus on this paint color. I'm going to give you all the details you need to know about Antique Pewter, and most importantly, by the end of the video, you will be equipped with an entire color palette involving trim colors and some color pairings as well that are going to blow your mind, hopefully.
I'll allow it.
Today's video sponsor is our Patreon page. If you want even more content from us, every single Sunday we release exclusive content for our Patreon members. And if you become a Prime member, you will further support us, and every 3 months you will get your own personalized mini color quickie. And our first batch of those are coming up very, very soon. Link in the description if you want more information on that, and thank you for your constant support, even on YouTube with a like and subscribe. Thank you. So Antique Pewter is a color that I'm really fascinated by because it harkens back to the warm neutrals of the past that were a little more grayish, so a combination of beige and gray, maybe a bit of brown. The one that immediately comes to mind, of course, is Revere Pewter, which is a much lighter paint color, more of a mid-tone, but has that sort of essence of warm-leaning neutral. Can sometimes show a little bit of a green undertone as well. Antique Pewter kind of amps both of those things up. It's a deeper and darker color and has more of an apparent green coloration to it. They sort of equate it to a patina, which is kind of nice. Now, how dark is this color? Well, it sits around a 25-ish LRV, and that means it only reflects 25% of the light that hits it. That puts it in the dark color category, but it's not nearly as dark as something that's close to black, which would be maybe around a 3 or a 4 LRV. A nice compromise of richness and depth and body, but also reflects a little bit of light. But it's not going to pigeonhole you into just using these dark colors. It has a little bit of a nice compromise of versatility because of that extra lightness. Now, I find this color to be a little bit of a mix between an army or olive green and kind of a taupe. That's because it sort of combines a darker gray, a little bit of brown, and some green. Pretty muted as a color. There's a reason it's called Antique Pewter. It has that neutral quality to it that I think gives it some versatility, but it also differentiates itself from the Revere Pewters of the world that are even more neutral, kind of right in the middle. This one has that green quality, which does push it into a different kind of area. Now, in terms of trim colors that I think would go really well, the light option would be White Dove. So if Antique Pewter was the main color in your room or in your home, let's say, White Dove could be an awesome off-white that will look pretty white in comparison. There's enough of a difference in lightness and darkness here, but what I love about White Dove is it has this very subtle warmth to it that will just energize the space in a perfect way. It's not warm enough where it'll look yellow or anything like that. It'll just have a nice less is more approach to your trim. It won't be overly bright, but bright enough to feel like white trim, which I think is the more popular option when it comes to trim colors for more people than not. Now, in terms of a darker trim color, if you wanted to go in that direction, which more and more people are doing, I find, Deep Creek would be my choice. Now, this is a color that has some similarities to Antique Pewter. There is a little bit of green. I would say there's a lot more brown. It has this chalky brown quality that Benjamin Moore describes it as, which I think is perfect. It's a little bit dusty, a little bit of a grayed out quality, kind of a toned down dark brown. And yes, this one does feel a little more true to what a taupe would be. It's also about 10 points darker than Antique Pewter, so not only is the color going to sort of be distinguishable from the wall, but also just the depth. There is a little bit of difference in terms of the darkness on your trim. Now, what about wall color pairings? Well, I like to offer you a neutral for this palette, just because if you're kind of at a loss about which color to use in a particular space from this palette, the neutral is kind of the go-to. And in this case, it's titanium. Now, don't get it twisted. This is not just a plain gray. I find titanium to have a little bit of a green quality, kind of like Antique Pewter, but obviously at a much lighter level. Its LRV is close to 70, around 68, which means it's going to have a huge amount of contrast with Antique Pewter, and also enough of a difference between it and White Dove. On either end of the spectrum, it's going to be able to separate itself. Now, because of that green kind of cool quality that titanium has, has, it's going to feel a little bit different than your typical beige or grayish colors even. It firmly plants itself in the cooler side of things, which is not necessarily super popular right now, but popularity schmopularity. That's what I always say. In terms of antique pewter and working with that color in particular, I find titanium to be a perfect fit. They both share that muted green quality, just at varying levels of depth. Not identical undertones, but definitely within the same family. Now, our second color pairing does go into the warm direction, because I am biased towards warm colored things. I love my faux leather kind of accents here and there, which is why we go from titanium to fairway oaks. This is a warm tan color. Has a little bit of an orange undertone, but not a fiery orange, almost a peachy quality to it, with just a little bit of red to give it that peachy quality, which I do really, really like. And this is going to be something that is a little more complementary to antique pewter, because if we're talking about the undertones themselves, you have green. And if we consult our color wheel right over here, you can see that antique pewter's green undertone is on this side, and then you have fairway oaks, which is not directly across, but it sits just next to the complementary pairing, which makes it kind of a split complementary. Almost a complementary pairing. So there will be a nice dynamic, but it won't be overly polarizing at the same time, which I think is a fun little trick you can do. You don't always need to go full complementary. You can kind of go split complementary as well. Now, fairway oaks is great because it has a lot of depth to it, but it also has that pleasant warmth. So I find colors like that, they have a lot more usability. They won't feel bogged down based on how dark they are because there's some liveliness to it. And that's why I think this is a color that you can use in a lot of different spaces in your home. You can even have it as like a predominant color if you didn't want to lean too heavily into those cooler colors. This last color is definitely the accent. So maybe you don't want to paint your whole home with this one, but just in small pockets, I think it'd be chef's kiss. It was inspired by the picture on the Benjamin Moore website for antique pewter. It is called Tender Pink. Now, this is a beautiful color. It's kind of the opposite of fairway oaks, where that color had that warm tan with that touch of peach. This is heavily leaning into that pink aspect with just a little touch of orange. Not enough to make it feel like a coral, but there is this sort of reciprocal behavior that those two colors have. And also that means this is another more complementary pairing to antique pewter, to titanium, so they can kind of have that dynamic back and forth that is really fun to look at. But like I said, this is a color that maybe you would just have in small doses here and there, a little dash of tender pink in one room or the other. And yes, I would recommend this as a whole room color, absolutely. Especially if your decor and your flooring is much more muted and kind of chilled out, this can be the thing that really stands out in the space. Here's the palette all together. Let me know what you think. Check out our Patreon for more content from us. Thank you so much for your support, and we got another video right over here for you.